Good morning and welcome to another episode of Hope in the Time of Corona. Today for something quite different but vitally important. It has been 9 days since George Floyd was brutally murdered by a white police officer whilst gasping for air and pleading for his life. It has been a week now, at least in my case, since social media and mainstream news have been dominated by responses to this abhorrent act. There have been, and there are, a lot of voices out there. And we as a team here at the church desperately do not want to just pile in our ignorance and just add to noise. But we also recognize and feel the need to say something at this juncture. We do not wish to remain silent on this matter. And so, if you want to know where it is that we're coming from and where it is indeed that we're headed as your church staff team, then please consider this to be our interim statement on the matter. Before I begin fully, just a word on the unified voice with which this video comes. These are my thoughts and reflections, some of my feelings and some of my learning from the past week. And so throughout this video, I'm going to be using the personal pronoun I, but please know that they are sentiments and words which are underwritten and supported and indeed affirmed by the entire Hope Church staff team, both lay and ordained. Here we go. The tragic circumstances surrounding George Floyd's death are deplorably nothing new. But for whatever reason, his well-documented and very public murder seems to have caught the attention and the imagination of scores of people previously ambivalent or at the very least silent regarding matters of race. The voice of the uprising, amplified across social and mainstream media, seems to be stirring some kind of awakening, a broadening of consciousness, a deepening empathy. All of this, of course, is good. All of these are good things, but this awakening is also a stunning indictment of the status quo. An indictment of the way things are. For as I awaken to the seriousness of this scourge in our society, I can see that, to my shame, there are voices that have been pointing at it, pleading for reform and raging against it for literally hundreds of years. And that I, as a white man, and those like me, have been ignoring, rationalizing and dismissing these voices with frightening efficiency. And so I'm sorry. I am sorry. I'm sorry as a white man. I am sorry as a priest, as a symbol of this institution, which is the church. And I want to apologize to my black brothers and sisters in this community, in our community. I am sorry that we have not been listening. I'm sorry that I have not been paying attention. It is an uncomfortable and sobering reality that a week of unease and frustration and anger for someone like me is dwarfed by a lifetime of pain and grief and the incalculable cost of injustice for millions more and for several generations prior. Whilst I have enjoyed the luxury of choice, deciding whether or not I want to participate in this discussion, in this debate, and in all honesty, choosing more often than not the path of least resistance. Whilst I've had that choice, Black people in my community, in our community, have had no choice. Participation thrust upon them by the virtue of the colour of their skin. And so as a white church leader, amongst other white church leaders here at this church, I want to take a moment, a few minutes now, to speak predominantly to the white members of our church. For I am convicted, and although I don't presume to bring any answers, I do feel certain that our progress in this matter begins with conviction and admission and with ownership. We need to own our problem. We don't just live in a racist society, but we are products of a racist society, perched at the end of a long and racist history. I am a product of a racist society. And you can go ahead and join with me in saying that if you'd like. I am the product of a racist society. And there is a special word given over for the products of racist societies, and that word is racist. I am racist, and I am sorry. For hundreds of years, the world over, there have arisen and persisted systems of denigration, subjugation, and exploitation that have sought to teach us all, that if somebody has white skin, then they are safe and intelligent and trustworthy. Whereas if someone has brown or black skin, they are dangerous and backwards and untrustworthy. These kinds of belief are called prejudices, and whether you're ready to accept that you have them or not, it is my firm belief that you do. They are the air we breathe. Prejudice is everything that we have ever known, and it is all we have to unlearn. It is all we have to fight against. This is why it is not simply good enough to not be a perpetrator of overtly racist acts. To rid society of racism, we must become truly anti-racist. So, what are we going to do? Well, as a staff team, we are going to double down on the intentions set out in our mission action plan. You might be familiar with this. Our intentions to make Hope Church a place that supports and champions and creates a safe and seen space for underrepresented people groups in the church. This will no doubt include some serious reviewing of our progress so far, and asking some uncomfortable questions about the very paradigm through which we have sought to effect change. But there is more to be done. We are going to need to do more because our mission action plan is not the church. And to that matter, nor am I. Please don't hear me wrong in this. I'm not trying to absolve myself of any guilt at all in this matter. Paul, Sophie, and I, and indeed the rest of the staff team, are undoubtedly powerful voices within this church, but we are not the church alone. If you want our church to be anti-racist, and you really should, then you've got to be anti-racist. Because we are the church. Together, it is we that are this church. And so this is your call to arms. This is your call to own and acknowledge your part in the deeply unjust world that we live in and prepare with us for action. If we are to take seriously the call to follow Jesus, then we must be ready to challenge the institution for the sake of the outcast. We must be ready to express the God truth about the preciousness of Black lives, even at the risk of our loss of esteem or liberty. It is the way of the cross. It is the call to us to give up our comfort and even our way of being, that the other might find life in its fullness. As I've already said, I have no answers right now, but there is much consensus around a number of things that we can all do as we set out on this journey together. And so I want to, take a few minutes now to relay some of them to you here. So, number one thing that we can all do: challenge your paradigm. Our way of being has a long history, which is going to require an immense amount of unlearning. So let's get informed. Let's read books and watch movies and listen to podcasts and start discussion groups. If you are white like I am, we will never fully understand the experience of being born into a disadvantaged skin. But there is nothing stopping us spending the rest of our lives striving to empathize, and no better time to start than now. Number two, as we learn, as our eyes are open, let's use the new insight we gain to speak up. Let us not let racist behavior that we recognize out there, overt or covert, go unchecked. That means in the office or at the pub, if we ever get to go back there, or in the supermarket queue, or when you're having dinner with your nan. We must prepare to speak up, and we must prepare to perpetually share in the discomfort born without choice by our Black brothers and sisters. Things are going to get uncomfortable as we speak up, and they must. Number three, put your money where your mouth is. In our ultimately capitalist society, we must give our money to charities that are engaged in fighting institutional racism and bringing an end to white supremacy. And I don't simply mean for you to redirect your other charity giving now to the most fashionable cause of the moment. We've got to reroute our money that we were going to spend on takeaway, on alcohol, on makeup or clothes, on sporting goods, on Netflix, on whatever it is that makes us feel comfortable. We have to let this hurt us. We have to let this inconvenience us, like it already hurts and inconveniences so many who don't have a choice at all. And fourthly, maybe most importantly, at least in my eyes, we must seek the voice of God. The voice of God, by the way, who speaks in the tongue of the prisoner, the marginalized, and the oppressed. We must seek the heart of God that acts for the least of these. Last Tuesday and Wednesday, as we were filming content for Hope in the Time of Corona, at that point, woefully unaware of the of this latest episode of pain, hurt, and distress which was erupting for Black communities the world over. Whilst that was going on, we were lauding the spiritual lives of noted Christian abolitionists. We were speaking about John Wesley, recording on Tuesday, and David Nelson on Thursday, and we were celebrating the contribution of these men who let their faith and the voice of God in their lives drive them to action. But But even there, we somehow weren't listening. It is, I believe, better late than never. So let us learn from the likes of John Wesley. Let them lead the way for us, that we too might listen to the voice of God, get informed, put our money where our mouth is, and lay our whole lives down for the cause. The reality is that our brothers and sisters of colour have already laid their whole lives down, whether they like it or not. And if we want to walk the walk of solidarity, then we need to be prepared to let this disrupt our lives, just like it disrupts their lives. Not just when the latest media storm erupts over the latest in a predictable line of despicable examples, but our everyday. This must disrupt our everyday until it is finished. We are starting the journey now, and wherever you find yourself in terms of awareness, in terms of learning, I encourage you, I ask you to come with us on this journey. It is vital for us. It is vital for the church. It is vital for this world.